Welcome. It's so exciting to see so many friendly faces during this time. And given that I'm a physics teacher, I can't let this go. It's May 4th, and it's so fitting for the presentation that we're going to have today. So I would like to say, may the force be with you today. Um, I would like to welcome you to Liam Strand's Senior Honors Independent Study project titled Let There Be Light: Illuminating the Physics, the Neurobiology, and Emotional Expression of Theatrical Lighting Design. So I would like to begin by just mentioning a few pieces that are important to me, and I'd love to let you guys know this. So Liam was my student last year in AP Physics, and I saw him develop a really genuine interest in the study of physics. But I also saw him make so many other connections to different sciences and to humanities and the arts, specifically music and theater. So last spring, when Liam came to speak to me about this project, he seemed to be so interested in understanding what theatrical lighting, the effect it had on our emotions. So I recall at the end of that conversation giving him a reading list, a possible reading list for the entire academic year. And not that I'm surprised, but by the end of the summer, Liam had about 2 to 3 times that reading list that I had originally encouraged. So what I would like to say to you specifically, Liam, is I am incredibly impressed with your profound intellectual curiosity behind this project. Um, I'm also impressed by your incredible ability to fuse the scientific depth of this project to the arts and humanities. And more so, I'm really grateful for what I've learned from this process of being your mentor and the amount of motivation and creativity that you have. So thank you. I really hope that everyone enjoys this experiential and illuminating presentation. And without further ado, I pass you over to Liam Strand.
Thank you very much, Miss O, for that wonderful introduction. Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming to my SHIS presentation. And thank you especially to my mentor, Miss O, and all of the teachers and administrators who have made this SHIS possible. SHP has given me and everyone I know the freedom to think deeply and to learn with the support of people who really care about us. So when I was thinking about doing a SHIS a lifetime ago, last February, I didn't hesitate to propose studying something a little off the beaten path that had been needling at me for a while. From the smallest community theaters to multi-million-dollar productions on Broadway, lighting design plays a critical role in setting the tone of a performance. But what is the process through which emotions are triggered in the minds of the audience? Specifically, how are lighting instruments used to create moods and trigger specific emotions? Let There Be Light, illuminating the physics, neurobiology, and emotional expression of theatrical lighting design is a mouthful, but I hope that by the end of this presentation, you will have a little more insight into what happens behind the scenes the next time you are in a theater. There are many aspects of understanding how lighting design impacts emotion. First is the physics of how the lighting instrument creates form, texture, and color on stage. This is known as the study of optics. Second is the neurobiological component, which focuses on how light affects the brain. Third is the process of artistic lighting design. In this case, it involves looking at how professional lighting designers manipulate light to create effects, moods, and emotions on stage and in the audience. In my study, I immersed myself in books and journal articles, conducted interviews with professional lighting designers, and engaged in reflection on my personal experience. For the purposes of this presentation, my findings are divided into 3 categories. First, theatrical lighting instrumentation, where I will introduce you to the lamp, reflector, gobos, lenses, and color frames. Second is human perception, where we will focus on how focus can be directed through human adaptability and how color and shadow influence our emotions. Then we will move on to lighting artistry, which will delve into the intrinsic artistry of color, script analysis, and collaboration. And at the end, I will tie it all together with examples of lighting design in action. First, we are going to talk about theatrical lighting instrumentation. What you see here is a standard lighting instrument called an ellipsoidal fixture. There are many types of lighting instruments, as there are people in this Zoom call, but this one is the most common and the most versatile. The following slides will dissect the fixture from back to front. The light seen on stage is created near the back of the instrument in the lamp. The lamp is essentially a more powerful version of an incandescent light bulb. The filament is heated and it glows, thus producing light. The reflector surrounds the lamp. It captures the light that radiates out from the lamp and directs it all forward, towards the lens and out of the fixture. Next come the gobos. Gobos can be inserted into the path of the light to create shadows on stage. Examples of gobos are shown on the left, and you can see their effect on the right. Framing shutters are similar to gobos, except that they come in from the sides to cut into the beam of light. This allows the designer to create straight, hard edges to light beams instead of the round edges that are produced without shutters. The lens tube is next. It houses the lenses that focus the beam of light. Below the instrument on the left is in focus and the instrument on the right is out of focus. Both of these effects are useful in different circumstances. Finally, at the very front of the fixture, the light passes through a colored piece of plastic called a gel. This tints the light a certain color before it flows through the performance space and onto the stage. Now we will move on to human perception and explore how focus is directed using human adaptability and how color and shadow can affect our emotions. One of the key factors in good lighting design is its ability to support the production by directing focus. The primary tool at the lighting designer's disposal to accomplish this is making changes in lighting intensity. In Performance Lighting Design, Nick Moran writes, humans can cope with an incredible range of light intensity, from close to 100,000 lux of a snowfield on a clear, bright day to just half a thousandth of a lux on a clear, moonless night away from urban centers. This amazing ability to process a huge range of light intensity is due in large part to the mechanical adjustment of the diameter of the pupil using the muscles in the iris. When it is very bright, the pupil contracts and lets in less light. When it is very dim, the pupil relaxes and lets in as much light as possible. In a theatrical setting, this ability means that lighting designers can use as little or as much light as they deem necessary to sufficiently illuminate a scene. It's only in the most dimly lit scenes that lighting designers need to be concerned about hitting the lower limit of human vision capabilities. Not only can humans see in a vast variety of lighting conditions, but human vision is also extremely sensitive in nearly all conditions to minuscule changes in brightness. Moran writes, quote, "Our attention may be directed by even small increases in relative intensity. But, while it is possible to direct attention with small increases in light intensity, we can also be easily distracted by relatively low points of illumination at the edge of the visual field, especially so when the point is flickering." This feature of human perception is a double-edged sword. While changes in intensity can be powerful tools to direct the audience's focus, if an instrument fails and begins to flicker or goes out altogether, it can be extremely distracting to the audience, as I will now demonstrate. When used intentionally, relative changes in illumination can be extremely powerful tools to direct the audience's focus, as we see here in this image from Young Frankenstein. Jack, in the front, is brightly illuminated, while Xiomara and Bennett are in relative shadow. The difference in brightness draws the audience's eyes to Jack, and hides the fact that Xiomara and Bennett are rummaging around for a prop on the shelf behind them. When they hand the prop to Jack, it will be a surprise. Now that we've established that changes in illumination can direct attention on stage, we need to quantify those changes so we can describe them accurately. Lighting Design, a Perception-Based Approach by Christopher Cuttle delves into the physics of this quantification. He uses a measurement called TAIR, or Target Ambient Illuminance Ratio. It is the ratio of how much light strikes the target to how bright the target is perceived to be. The ambient light is described using MRSE, or Mean Room Surface Excidence. That measurement describes how much light reflects through the space. These are examples of TAIR values in shows from Sacred Heart. First, on the left is a scene from The Crucible. It is nearly impossible to see the background, and the actors are brightly illuminated. Second is a scene from The Imaginary Invalid. The three actresses in front are far brighter than the background, but the background is still visible. Third is a scene from Young Frankenstein. The focus is definitely on Bennett at the front, but Ian, Jack, and Xiomara are visible and the reactions are easily discernible. Finally, we have a scene from the end of The Crucible. Alekos is brightly lit, but everything else around him is easy enough to see. Other than directing focus, light also heightens emotions on stage. Light has an impact both on the emotions expressed by actors and on the emotions felt by the audience. Understanding how to use colors to indicate emotion begins by understanding how and why humans perceive color. In The Secret Language of Color, Joanne and Ariel Exit explain that humans see and discern a wide variety of colors because one of the many tools humans use to communicate is the color of our skin. For example, a person who blushes can be understood to be embarrassed. Someone whose face turns red can be quickly identified as angry, and someone who is turning green is likely feeling ill and should probably be assisted to the nearest bathroom. In short, our skin can change in hue dramatically depending on both our physical state and on our emotions. Seeing these colors on others' faces for hundreds of thousands of years has deeply ingrained certain associations in the human brain. From a lighting design perspective, these evolutionary associations translate into the following archetypes that are seen here. Blue is associated with security. Yellow is associated with fun and joy. Gray, along with brown and black, indicate mourning. Red is associated with passion. And finally, purple indicates regality and dignity. These associations are used throughout lighting design across innumerable shows all around the world. The reason we are able to use color to indicate emotion on stage is because it allows the audience to understand what's happening. This is due to a concept called color constancy. When we see an object, we see it in the context of its surroundings and are able to identify both the color of the object and the color of the light illuminating it. For example, in these photos from the Crucible, we see the same material used 3 times. First, on Julie. Second, on Alekos. And finally, on Keegan. If we take a look at the color of the material in these 3 situations, we see that the colors change dramatically. But, despite the changes in color, we still know that they are white clothes illuminated with a colored light, and not vice versa. Color constancy allows the audience to see a vibrantly illuminated scene and not be confused by seemingly unrealistic colors. There is perhaps no more famous illustration of color constancy than this optical illusion. Here, the squares labeled A and B are actually the same color. We perceive them to be different colors because we instinctively understand that square B is in the shadow of the green cylinder, and we assume that it is actually much lighter than it is in reality. To prove to you that they are actually the same color, let's connect the squares together. See? There's no trickery here. The colors we've talked about so far are categorical, meaning that we have applied a category, like red, blue, or gray, to the color that we see. Humans categorically encode color to more quickly comprehend visual input, but not all light is encoded categorically. People see color temperature, which is warm or cool light, as a spectrum. Our spectrum of non-categorical encoding provides an additional method of color manipulation to the lighting designer. A warm light, as seen on the left, is generally comforting, like a fireplace or a sunset. Under warm light, skin tones glow and appear very healthy. In contrast, cool light, as seen on the right, is clinical and tense, like an operating theater or an office bullpen. People tend to look lifeless because skin tones are washed out. Here we have a direct comparison between scenes with warm and cool light. Both scenes primarily use backlight to illuminate the subject, and both of the subjects are sitting down. The only major difference in the lighting is the color temperature. Even without looking at the action on stage, the lighting on the left indicates a level of joviality and security, while the lighting on the right indicates stress and loss. Beyond just the color used to light the subjects, the texture of the light can dramatically affect a scene's mood. Harsh shadows can enhance facial features, but they also add to the stress of a scene. A strong shadow, however, in an unnatural location, can be distracting if a natural look is desired. Soft shadows can create an intimate, welcoming space, but it can be difficult to minimize light bleed when shadows are intentionally very soft. Here, we see an excellent example of strong shadows used to indicate character traits. Grant, on the right, is clearly nefarious because his face is entirely in shadow, while Sean, in the center, has benevolent intentions. The crisp shadow lines on the actors' faces also indicates a level of stress. Let's move on to where this all starts coming together, how light and color are used by artists, script analysis, and collaboration. Although color's role as a supporting player in theatrical production is critical, it is also important to recognize its value as an intrinsic art form. In his book On Color, David Scott Castan describes how color can serve to bring people closer to the subjects of photographic images. His primary comparison is between the universally known migrant mother photographed by Dorothea Lange in 1936, on the left, and the much less famous migrant mother photographed by Doug Kuntz in 2016 on the right. When the first photographs of the hardships of migrants began to filter through to the American public, they captured the public's eye in a way that would have been impossible without the time-disassociated telepresence afforded by photography. It is, without a doubt, a beautiful photograph, independent of its subject and the turmoil which surrounded her. But the beauty of the photograph undercuts the subject matter. Furthermore, the fact that the photograph is resolved in grayscale separates the modern viewer from the subjects. Modern consumers of media are used to the vibrant colors reproduced in smartphone and digital photographs. To today's audience, Lange's migrant mother is a novelty, an art object, and not photojournalism or social commentary. Now turn to Kuntz's migrant mother. It is easy to see the fear in her eyes and the curiosity of her children. The precariousness of her situation is evident. The mylar blanket indicates a gesture of comfort from another person, perhaps an aid worker. Anyone who looks at this image feels her pain and understands what's happening. This is one of the amazing powers of color. It connects people to the media they consume. Kuntz's photograph is, without a doubt, a piece of journalism. Beyond its use in photography, color itself can be a creative expression. The French painter Yves Klein painted much of his career in blue. Not just any blue, but International Klein blue, a shade of blue that he himself developed. Castan writes that International Klein blue is, quote, vibrant and voluptuous, ravishing and irresistible. This hue became his art form as he experimented with different methods of applying the pigment to the canvas. He used his hands, sponges, brushes, and most famously, human models to wring every last drop of emotion and vibrancy out of his paint. Klein's work provides a rare opportunity to experience color as an art form. Klein himself developed the color and the application method. So, viewing Klein's work as intended is equivalent to seeing Klein's color as intended. Here, we see International Klein blue, as Klein intended, in the entrancing and enigmatic painting titled Jonathan Swift. Robert Ryman's art is similarly a monochromatic experience. He worked in shades of white and refused to name his paintings. He wanted to free his color from archetypal meaning or symbolism, saying, quote, the painting should just be about what it's about, and not other things, end quote. In his case, his paintings were about the color white. Frank Stella, one of Ryman's successors, once said that his goal was, quote, to keep the paint as good as it was in the can, end quote. But in all seriousness, both Stella and Ryman had a deep understanding of their colors and worked meticulously to create pleasing visual effects. Stella chose to focus on Melville's Moby Dick for 12 years of his career, titling 275 works with chapter titles from the tome. This one is called The Shark Massacre. Although it is easy to write off his works as merely illustrations of a greater work, they are not. They are grand artistic responses to literature, artistic forms in and of themselves. Just as Stella had a clear understanding of Moby Dick, when setting out to use light to enhance a performance, the lighting designer must first have a clear understanding of the work that he or she is lighting. Practicing lighting designers begin with a script. In an interview, one of my mentors, lighting designer and instructor at Exeter University in the UK, John Primrose, said that, quote, the starting point is always the script, where one exists, end quote. This is because when all is said and done, the role of the lighting designer is to support the production, and that includes being consonant with the work that is being performed. Here we see the first pages of The Crucible by Arthur Miller. Let's look for indications of setting, mood, or anything else that might help inspire the lighting design. First, we see that it is dawn, and the light should slowly rise during the beginning of the scene. Then, Miller gives direct instructions to have the strongest light source at stage left. Moving forward, Miller describes a misty bluish lighting effect, then tells us exactly how to create that effect. Continuing on, we see that the mood should be mysterious and suspenseful, and finally, we get a note about the blue lighting effect again. As you can see, period playwrights frequently included detailed lighting instructions in their scripts, often going so far as to include lighting plots in the back pages. Now let's turn to a more modern play, Young Frankenstein by Mel Brooks. As we begin to read, we see that there is a fire burning in the fireplace, and the room is mostly lit by candles. In real life, both of these light sources have a very warm color temperature, so it would be a good idea to replicate that on stage. Jumping back, we see that it is midnight, and the room should feel vast. Both of these last two items can be highlighted by using a cool color temperature to light the areas of the stage that are far away from the candles in the fireplace. Here is the realization of the two scenes we just analyzed. On the left, we have the crucible, with its moody, cool tones, sharp shadows, and dim light. As you can see, the lighting designer for our production did not follow Miller's instructions to the letter, but the mood that Miller indicated is definitely present. On the right, we have Young Frankenstein, still with cool tones, but also with soft shadows and more bright light. Also, the area near the fireplace has a warmer, softer light. These two images have similar elements, but small differences in shadow strength, color temperature, and intensity add up to a dramatically different mood on stage. How did lighting designers accomplish the duality of supporting the production and creating a work of art? Stella, Ryman, and Klein certainly never had to obey the whims of a director. Dozens of textbooks have been written on this subject, but this brief summary will provide some insights into how professional lighting designers work as a part of a team to produce both a beautiful lighting design and an amazing production. In short, the lighting designer must utilize the resources available to him or her to build the most powerful lighting design possible, given the constraints of the production. But it is critical to remember that the relationships between members of the creative team take priority over the beauty of the lighting design. As a member of the creative team behind a production, the lighting designer may sometimes need to close their eyes during a particular scene because the director insisted on their own aesthetic over that of the lighting designer. Prioritizing the relationship over the artistry is difficult, as it is easy to see the lighting design as the lighting designer's exclusive project. But it is necessary to make that prioritization, as the production as a whole must take precedence over the lighting design. Moving beyond the director's wishes, the lighting designer must also react to the set design. If the set is highly intricate, a well-executed lighting design will reveal that to the audience. Conversely, if the set is minimal, as is the case in many low-budget productions, the lighting designer may be called upon to use light to imitate set pieces like those we see in this photo. In these types of productions, the lighting designer may specifically be asked to build a set out of light for the actors. Joseph Svoboda, a stage designer in Prague, used curtains of light to create vast three-dimensional shapes in space, which could appear and disappear with the push of a fader. Here we have examples of two extremes of set design. On the left is the highly intricate set of Young Frankenstein, and on the right is the minimalist set of Grease. Both of these sets suited their productions very well, but it would not make sense for them to light them in the same way. The lighting designer for Young Frankenstein should show off the set, but the lighting design for Grease needs to play more of a role in defining the setting and mood of scenes, because the set isn't able to do so. In a theater with more resources, a cyclorama can be illuminated with LED fixtures to great effect. Moran writes, quote, "When it is done well, a simple piece of cloth turns into the infinite and variable heavens, able to signify not just time and place, but whatever dramaturgical qualities are called for by the production." Finally, the lighting designer must be in constant communication with the director and the other members of the creative team from the very beginning of the production process to determine what the lighting design should be. Furthermore, lighting designers must have an understanding of the constraints of a given production. For example, if the designer wants a very naturalistic lighting setup, then the lighting designer's color palette is limited to hues that are found in the play's setting, and decisions about intensity and focus will be paramount in establishing mood. Light and color can be used to tell a story and influence the audience's emotions using color perception. Thoughtful illumination hierarchies can highlight the most powerful moments of a production, while concealing mistakes when necessary. Although great theatrical lighting tends to fade into the background when it is doing its job of supporting the production, lighting design is, in and of itself, an art form. When the lighting designer fully utilizes his or her tools, both conceptual and physical, in collaboration with the other members of the creative team, the resulting production feels akin to magic, as the set, costumes, and actors are brought to life. Coming full circle to what compelled me to embark on this independent study, a theatrical production is much like what happens at SHP. Every piece of the puzzle matters, as we are given the freedom to think deeply and to learn with the support of people who really care. Now we get to the really fun part, looking at examples of beautiful lighting design in shows from Sacred Heart. First, we have a scene from Young Frankenstein. As you watch, note the use of shadows to suggest a forest scene, and the warm yellow tones remind the audience that this is a comedy.
Then we have to keep looking. Silly, if we can only find this monster, our villains will have something that's always wanted. Something that's always needed.
A key bar?
Ooh! No. Peace of mind. If we can only catch this monster. So even imagine what could be happening to this woman right now.
Next, we have a very different forest scene, this one from The Crucible. Here, very cool tones reinforce themes of anxiety and conflict, and again, gobos are used to project beams of light onto the floor, suggesting the forest's presence. Alekos, playing the role of John Proctor, is holding the only source of bright illumination in the scene, a powerful flashlight.
I must speak with you, Abigail.
In another scene from The Crucible, Sean and Izzy, playing Titubo and Sarah, are in a jail cell. The sharp shadows highlight their facial bone structure, making them look more gaunt than they actually are. At the end, note the bright red light from the door leading to the gallows, indicating the violence which lies just out of view.
Yes, Sarah! That's him! His Majesty!
Majesty, I'm here!
The deputy governor's arrived. Come along.
Oh, no! That's for me! I'm going home.
That ain't Satan, just a poor old cow. Good along now.
Now you tell him to cook. You tell him that Sarah Good is going too.
Take me home, devil! Take me home!
Towards the end of the same scene, the sun rises in the background. See how the light in the windows and on the actors begins to change as soon as Ryan says, "The sun is soon up."
What say you, Proctor? The sun is soon up.
Do what you will, but let none be your judge. There is no higher judge under heaven than Proctor is. Forgive me, John, forgive me. I never knew such goodness in the world.
I want my life.
You'll confess yourself.
I will have my life.
God be praised! Proctor will confess his
Why does he cry now? It is evil, is it not?
Finally, we have an excellent use of a cyclorama in Schrodinger's Jewels to suggest a sunrise.
Oh, you guys are up.
I think the proper greeting is good morning. Good morning, Fred.
Sit down there, mi amigo. We got here what we call in Texas, Huevos Rancheros. Whatever.
Before we get to your questions, I want to thank everyone who made my SHIS possible, beginning with my off-campus mentors, Mr. Rose, Mr. Primrose, and Dr. Hanson. Also, our SHP theater faculty, Mr. Adams, Mr. E., Miss Burdick, and Chris Gregory, for all of their support and for allowing me to use their incredible resources throughout this process. Mr. Ramos for his guidance throughout the application process and his leadership as my independent study progressed. Miss Sweeney for her help on the biological side of things, and of course, Miss Ornelas, my on-campus mentor, for her guidance and for believing in me from the very beginning. Thank you to all of the amazing SHP students and Mr. McDade who appeared in the video clips and photographs throughout this presentation. And finally, thank you to all of the people who have given me opportunities, challenged me, encouraged me, inspired me, supported me, believed in me, or let me move a test during Tech Week. I thank every one of you.
At this time, I would like to unmute everyone so that we can give a round of applause. Liam, that was fantastic. Yeah.
Kelly Bam.